welcome to this video. My name is Becca, and today I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about the things that I'm going to miss about living in New Zealand. So we lived there for 2 years, and now we have just moved back home to the US, and there are just so many wonderful things that I absolutely love about New Zealand. I cherish our time and our memories from there. So I just compiled a big list of the things that I'm going to really miss. So these range from like really big things to really minute, small things that maybe some people won't even have noticed or care about. But the first one is definitely, I just feel like there's a majority nice people in New Zealand. And I kind of hesitate saying that because I don't want it to sound like I think that a lot of people in the US are mean or whatever. Like, there are so many wonderful, nice people in the US too. But I feel like there's just something a little bit special and different about the people in New Zealand. And I've given this a lot of thought. And I feel like part of it is, like, starting at a very young age, like in the kindy, in the school system, I feel like they just have a different mindset and philosophy. Like, it's a lot more integrative and kind of more caring. And I feel like in the US, raising children is kind of a more self-centered approach. And I'm not saying that either one is like right or wrong. A couple little examples. We were at the beach one time and William, our 2-year-old, was knocking this like 8-year-old sandcastle down over and over. I mean, he only did it like once, maybe twice, and I kept trying to stop him. I was appalled and I was like, oh my gosh, this kid's gonna get so angry. But the 8-year-old was like, it's okay, kids can be kids, like they're only this young one. So I'm like, oh, what? How do you have the mental maturity to say something like that? And then another example is one time we were at a park and there was this really big spinny disc thing and there were so many kids, like 10 kids up on it spinning around, and William toddles over and he's like trying to hop on but it's a little too high, and I just watched as this other kid like picks him up and puts him on. I was like, oh, that is so sweet. They take it a step further and another like totally different kid on the spinny thing like wraps an arm around William to make sure that he stays on and stays safe, and I'm like, it's so special. I don't know. So I feel like starting at an early age, they just kind of incorporate this more loving and helpful culture. And I feel like that translates all the way up. I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what I'm trying to say, huh? The next random thing on this list is the midwives and like the birthing experience, because I just had a baby 2.5 months ago and it was an awesome experience. I absolutely loved it. I don't even know if I want another kid, whatever, but if I do, I am definitely going to miss the experience of having a baby in New Zealand because it was perfect. Next super huge thing is the free healthcare. I feel like I have to put air quotes around it because everybody in the US is like, it's not free, like everybody has to pay for it. I'm not going to go into that. However, I like everybody chipping in with their little bit of taxes so that everybody can have affordable healthcare. You hear the horror stories that are true stories about people that get cancer or have like a big accident and they need tons and tons of medical care. It bankrupts them. Like, they can't afford it. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that they don't have, even though they have insurance, whatever. It's just such a relief to be in a country that you know that no matter what happens, you will have health care. And then on top of that, children are completely free, which is amazing because I had a 2-year-old that went to the emergency room 3 times in the 2 years that we were there. Like, he's a wild thing, and I'm just so grateful that no matter what happens, I knew that he would be okay. We didn't need to hesitate to take him to go see a doctor. As I just spoke about, I also had a baby there and it was totally free. Incredible. It makes such a big difference in your life, not having that stress looming over. Because even though me and my husband and our kids are like healthy, you never know when something's going to happen and you don't know how expensive it's going to be in the US. So that is something that I will forever be so sad about not having here. Next is the infinite beaches. I love New Zealand because it's like you can drive in any direction because you live on an island and you can hit a beach and chances are it's going to be stunning. And then there are so many different beaches. Like, you can choose which beach you want for the adventure that you want for the day. Like, do you want to go do some hiking and have some beautiful beach views? You can go to this beach. If you want a beautiful beach for swimming and lounging all day, you can go to this one. Another thing that I'm going to greatly miss is I just feel like the quality of life, the essence of life, I don't know, it feels really different in the two countries. In New Zealand, I just feel like there's less looming stress. I feel like everybody's a little bit more laid back and just go with the flow, and I love that because that is my personality, that is who I am at my core. And it's just funny because like we landed in the US and almost immediately I'm like, I should go back to school, like I should get a career, like what am I doing being a stay-at-home mom, like that's not enough. And I'm like, I like being a stay-at-home mom and I like my life, but you know, it's just the culture here just really eggs you on to do more and more and more and be more, and you're not enough and keep going, and why aren't you a millionaire? Yeah, I just feel like the focus here is really on your career, and in New Zealand it's just very much like, oh, you have your job, but you live the rest of your life. Like, how are you choosing to live the rest of your life? Like, who are you as a person? I kind of feel like America is a little too ambitious sometimes. I don't know, it can be kind of fun to get your whole life completely wrapped up in this rolling ball that is a career and a job. Anyways, another thing with this whole culture thing I really love in New Zealand, I feel like it's not that common to get really into politics and religion. Whereas here, I feel like that is just an everyday conversation. Everybody is so mad about one or the other, and so it's constant, and it's exhausting, and it's one of those conversations that you don't win from. I miss the separation that we had when we lived in New Zealand, because I would call my friends and family at home, and then they would start talking about this stuff, and then we get into this like heated argument over the phone, and I'm like, I don't want to talk about this. It made me really appreciate living in New Zealand and having that huge separation, like not needing to talk about this every single day. Another thing that I'm going to miss, that I always appreciated about living in New Zealand, is how good the quality of roads are. Like, I feel like it's kind of hard to find a pothole in New Zealand, at least in Auckland where we were. I guess I can't speak about the rest of the country. But here, because there's so much snow, and I don't know, maybe it's just how the public government runs here or whatever, you can hardly find a road that doesn't have potholes. You'll be driving down a road and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a flat tire, and then all of a sudden the road smooths out again. You're like, oh no, that was just the road. And there's sometimes you feel like you're playing Mario Kart, swerving around all the giant holes in the road. A thing that I will not miss is how windy the roads are in New Zealand. It takes so much longer to get anywhere because, woo, all the way down the country. One of the biggest things that I'm going to miss about New Zealand is the food quality. I just feel like the food quality there is so much higher than in the US. And you can find really good food quality here, and once we get really nice and settled, like, I plan on doing that and sourcing really good quality of everything. I go on this tangent a lot with people, but it's like meat is a really good example, because in New Zealand I feel like even the lowest grade of meat is still better than like the average grade of meat here. Because like going to the grocery store, it's incredibly hard to find like really good grass-fed, like no antibiotics, not factory farm animal, whereas in New Zealand I think it's harder to find factory farmed anything. I'm actually okay with the idea of eating the meat in New Zealand, whereas here I feel like I have to go and source really local, like find a butcher here, and it feels like a lot more work, and also it's really expensive. Some other food related things, I'm going to greatly miss Whitaker's. We were down to our last 3 bars. Billy keeps being like, we need to share with everybody and show how good Whitaker's is, and I'm like, I am not sharing any more of that chocolate. It is for me and you and our son, and I'm being such a snob about it. The other thing that I am so sad about is I really miss the coffee quality, because I feel like there everybody has like a pretty high standard of coffee, and here it is what it is. Again, as soon as we get settled, like, we're gonna get an espresso machine because we're just so snobby about it. I don't know, once you get used to a certain standard, it's hard to go back to what you were used to. Another silly thing is I feel like the food in New Zealand, a lot of the produce and stuff has a lot more flavor. Here's an example. So like when we first landed here, I was so excited because I opened up my sister's fridge and she had this huge box of strawberries. Strawberries in winter, like, this is insane, this is so exciting. And so I plop it out and I start eating them and I'm like, this is absolute no flavor. Because strawberries should not be grown in winter. They should not be produced and eaten in wintertime, because that is not their natural, yeah, it's kind of annoying in New Zealand to not be able to get what you want when you want it. However, is it worth getting something that has no flavor and shouldn't be grown at that season anyways? So that was a fun lesson to relearn. And the other thing, I feel like New Zealand always had really good carrot flavor. Like, you eat a carrot and you're like, man, this is such a good flavor. I'm just gonna enjoy snacking on this carrot. And then we got over here and I ate one. I was like, this is like chewing hard water. I don't know. It just doesn't have a very good flavor to it. Oh, another thing is I miss tasty cheese so much. And Edam, actually we ate so much more Edam. I can't find a good substitute for it here. Anyways. Yeah. It's just the little things that I miss. Another thing, feta. We ate so much feta in New Zealand and it was so good. And then we got over here, we had some feta in a salad that a friend had made. And I was like, oh, feta, I haven't had this in a while. And I was like, this tastes gross. Like, first it had no flavor, and then the little bit of flavor that it did have was like, this is not feta. Next thing that I miss horribly is candy. I am not going to talk too much about this, but all I'm going to say is how life-changing and incredible it is that the government gives everybody 20 free hours of childcare. Like, that is not possible here. And then on top of that, it's like a really, really good quality childcare too. Because I feel like here, I get very scared of the idea of putting my kid in daycare or any kind of thing like that. But in New Zealand, like you go to it and it's just incredible. And like he loved going to it, and I think that he really grew and thrived in that setting. There's nothing like that here. So I think our whole entire family misses that one a ton. And kind of going along with that, I just feel like there's so many amazing resources for kids. You can walk in any direction and you will run into a really fun park. All the parks are unique, and some of them are kind of like individually built and they're really cool, and there's just so much to do. There are some amazing parks in the US, of course, as well, but I feel like a lot of the parks here are just the kind of plastic prefabricated ones. So you go to that one and that means that you've gone to like almost all of them, because there's the slide, there's the climbing wall, and then there's the swing, and then that's pretty much it. Next thing is I just feel like New Zealand has incredible weather. I love it when I hear Kiwis complaining about how hot the summers are, because I'm like, you don't know what hot is. Like, I grew up in Texas where it is incredibly hot and humid and disgusting. We live in Utah right now. Like, we've gone to Arizona where it's like 120 degrees Fahrenheit and you will bake alive if you're outside. New Zealand doesn't ever get to that. Like, I remember looking at the temperatures before we first moved there and I was like, how do they never get above this certain temperature range? How is that possible? And then the winters are so mild. Like, yeah, I hated the rain all the time, but it didn't ever freeze. Like, it didn't snow up in Auckland, and it was really nice. I missed the overall feeling of being safe in New Zealand. And a lot of Kiwis, I think it's funny because they talk about how unsafe New Zealand is getting, and I'm like, come to the US. I feel like you go to the parks and you're not creeped out by a weird person that's hanging out there, or you can go to the malls and not worry about having a gunman there. Or, oh, another big thing is I feel like I'm scared of the driving here now. Because in New Zealand, I feel like for the most part, nobody really sped, and you have much lower speed limits to begin with there. And I've just talked to so many Kiwis and friends from New Zealand that are like, why would you speed? Like, the speed limit is there. There's no reason to speed. Whereas here, you go down the highway and I feel like everybody's trying to kill themselves. Like, they are zooming through, like weaving through all the cars. They're going so fast. It's like a 5-lane highway and it's just insane. I'm like, why are you going so fast? And I'm just sitting there driving in the slow lane, like going the speed limit. I'm like, I am not going any faster. People just kind of have this ego here and it translates to being unsafe. Next is the cafe culture. I love that you can pop out to a coffee shop in the morning and it's so fun, and you can go with your friends or your partner, and then you can just spend a couple hours eating really delicious food and yummy snacks and good coffee, and it's just such a vibe. I love it. Along with that, I just feel like there's so much to do in New Zealand, or at least in Auckland. Like, it wasn't hard to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, this is what we're going to do today. We can go to a coffee shop, and then we can go to the beach, and then we can go and do a walk, and there's just so much available to do. You have a lot of access to the outdoors, and there's like a lot of really beautiful things that aren't that far away. There's just so much good food available. Like, there's some really good food here in the US, obviously, but you don't have to be like, oh, should we go to Olive Garden tonight? Like, there just is so much natural beauty everywhere, all throughout New Zealand. Kind of endless adventures to go on. Like, you can keep it local and just kind of spend the day, or you can plan a 2-week trip and still not be able to see everything in the little area that you're checking out. I could have spent another 10 years in New Zealand and still had more that I wanted to do. I also really miss the bird sounds. The bird sounds there were so unique and magical. The bushwalks, like, I'm going to so greatly miss those. You could just drive for 30 minutes and go on a little walk and you feel like you're on a different planet, and it's so restorative and magical, and I don't know what it is about it, but it's fantastic. And like the plants, I really miss the plants in New Zealand. Like, the other day we went to an aquarium and they had this like rainforest section, and some of the plants were similar to the ones in New Zealand. I'm like, I didn't realize I missed this so much. But it's really fascinating, all the different plants that you guys have there, because I remember the whole first year, every different season would come up and a different plant would come out and like shine. I'm like all the different colors, the way that they grow, like they're different species totally of plants. I don't know that much about plants. I just knew that they were very cool. Maybe Kiwis would say the same thing about the plants here. It's just I'm used to these ones, and so I really miss how unique and different all the plants were there. I also just really miss the idea that, or just knowing that I'm living on an island. Like, how cool is that? Like, I could see parrots flying around. I think what I'll miss the most, definitely, number one is the friends that we made there. I'm not even going to talk about that because I don't want to get emotional. The other thing too is it took us our full 2 years there to feel really settled and to feel like this is our home that we've worked really hard to make, and to have all of that kind of ripped away and to come back here and try to find like a new home and to get resettled. I really miss that. And I miss the feeling of being there, the adventure of it all. And it's like looking back on it, me and Billy, we both grew so much in the time that we were down there. Like we grew as individuals, we grew as a couple, we grew as parents, and it's just so much happened. And I think we will always very fondly look back on that time. But it is kind of funny because we both realize this and talk about it, that we have a hard time like looking at our photos and videos of that time because I don't know, I think it's going to take us a very long time to process. On a lighter note, some things that I maybe don't miss about New Zealand, let's see. I don't miss living on a volcano. I don't know, and not enough people talked about this, but I was low-key a little bit freaked out every time I thought about it. Like, a volcano could explode and we're all gonna die. Like, where do you go? How do you get away from a volcano on an island? I don't miss how expensive everything is. I hated the feeling of feeling like I was never, ever, ever going to be able to afford a house there. Another thing that I truly do not miss is not having a dryer. That is like my number one favorite thing about moving back to the US is everybody has a dryer. You can do your whole load of laundry from the washing all the way to the drying and putting away in like 2 hours. Top that. I don't think you can. Central air conditioning and heating. And I mean, these last two things, obviously some people have in their homes in New Zealand, but like we lived in an old villa and I loved it. However, I love central heating and air conditioning because along with that, you don't have to worry about mold growing all over everything all winter long. Like we had such a mold problem in our house and I hated it, especially with 2 little kids. I'm like, I'm going to make them sick. Another thing that I have really loved about being in the US and that I don't miss about New Zealand at all is the amazing thrifting here. I landed here and on like 2 little trips, I got a new wardrobe for all 4 of us. And it was so cheap, like it's incredible. You go to these stores, they are plentiful. We obviously really miss our time there and we miss a lot about the country and the culture and the people and the food, and yeah, there's a lot that I love about the US too, so I don't want it to come across that way. And I know a lot of time these videos do. Maybe I need to make a video about what I love about the US so that it doesn't sound like I hate being here. But anyways, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!